Winds, rains, torrents, water levels. What do they all have in common?
People who ignore the warnings.
I thought it was alphabetical names in sequence from Fiona to Ian.
Fiona and Ian. Ian, 5th largest hurricane to hit the United States.
Ever. In recorded history.
I got a feeling it's going to be the most costly.
Likely. Did you see this?
Maybe not, because the one that was in Louisiana, right?
Oh, yes.
Geez, there was thousands that died, wasn't there? Yeah, they're just thinking hundreds died in this. Unfortunately, deaths that probably could have been prevented, except I'll tell you a sad story if you want to hear it.
It's the Jim and Terry Show. You are the Jim of the Jim and Terry Show. Go ahead.
Did you
it's
hear
your
it?
show.
Did you hear?
No, I haven't. And you're going to share.
Yes. Well, they were interviewing a guy 7 stories up in a building, and he was pretty secure. He says it's steel reinforced concrete building. I'm feeling okay. And he mentioned in the interview he was just describing what was going on below him, the flooding and everything. He goes and what did he call it? It wasn't commotion. What happens when there's something in the streets? Anyways, I'll say commotion. It was worse than that. And the interviewer said, "What do you mean by that?" And he says, "The homeless people trying to get into the buildings. The water's rising. They can't get in the buildings."
They locked the buildings?
Well, you can't get.
The pressure from the water
the pressure,
would keep the doors shut.
You can't get in the building. Maybe they're locked, but the thing is part of the problem is now your hydro's out, everything's out. And the guy, after the interview, they said, "Well, what are you going to do now?" He says, "Well, we're going to wait for a calm." He says, "I can't go out now. Can't go out."
Because of the chaos.
Well, chaos. He said chaos in the streets. He says, "I can't go out now because there's nothing we can do because we're just going to get swept away with everything else." He says, "But as soon as it calms down, we've decided to go out and see what we can see what we can help, if we can help anybody. But there's going to be some of your dead. Maybe they didn't even hear the news reports."
Interesting. So your surmise is that part of the casualties we are going to read about in terms of statistics for this hurricane will be the passing of homeless people who were unable to find shelter as the storm broke. To tell you the truth, I didn't even think about that. What city was that in, or did you?
That was, it was...
one of the ones on the West Coast where it came in?
Yeah, it was close to Clearwater, I think. It wasn't that, but I can't remember the name of it.
Fort Myers?
No, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
In that area.
The point is there's tragedy unfolding in stories of human loss that we will never...
There's those who refuse to leave and are going to die.
Well,
and
homelessness is not refusing to leave.
I know, but that's what I'm saying is they were warned, the people who did hear.
Yeah.
And last report I heard, the guy said, unfortunately, a number of you are going to die because you chose to stay when we asked you please to get out. But the homeless are almost innocent when it comes to maybe they didn't even hear. No idea what was coming other than a hurricane.
How do you possibly leave if you're homeless?
Yeah, and you have to walk. And unfortunately, that's a long way to get out of the way.
Should there not be agencies within the municipalities, perhaps even at the state level, that would be available for emergencies such as this? A flooding or a hurricane is just one example, but should you not have something ready to go?
Now you mentioned that police were, this particular place, police were going before the floods came. We're driving, I'm sure they were telling everybody, you got to get out of here or go somewhere. I know I saw a fire department rescue a lady who decided to drive, not the brightest thing to do, and they had to bring her into a flooded, fire hall. And they couldn't use their equipment because it was rendered unable to work because the trucks and everything were underwater. But they brought her in there and took her upstairs. True. But what were you doing out driving?
Yeah. What were you thinking?
What were you thinking?
I guess that's going to be the question that's going to be asked to a lot of people. What were you thinking, or were you not thinking? Or were you desperate? Sometimes when you're desperate, you're not thinking.
Yeah, and then at the end of it, I remember hearing them say yesterday, it's too late now. You can't leave. Hunker down. You can't leave. Yeah. Don't try to leave. Yeah. So maybe some did try to outrun the surge. and you just get caught in it. And surges are almost like, they're not a tsunami, but they bring junk with them.
Yes.
And so you may think you can stand in water that's 3 feet high, but it might be bringing a door 2 feet under the water that's just going to take your shins out, break both your legs. And that's where people make the mistake in a tsunami. A tsunami brings garbage with it that'll just cut you to shreds. So, yeah, my heart goes out to them and to the homeless as well. Yeah. That some of the people that die, it wasn't necessarily their fault.
I guess we'll be reading lots of these stories. Now, that's Ian, the most recent one, the gigantic one that we all watched on the map. Encapsulate Fiona. Almost all of Florida. It was that big.
Oh, yeah. So, all of Florida felt it. I saw a report this morning, and we'll move on to Fiona, but I saw a report this morning in Kissimmee where I go down in the spring to vacation, and that was in the news because of the flooding.
What did you see on Kissimmee?
Flooding.
Just flooding.
And wind damage, and that was down to a tropical storm. Okay, so to Fiona, who attacked Canada.
Yeah,
How
we don't
dare
often
her.
get this kind of stuff. And my own recollection with hurricanes doesn't go... there has never been one that I have familiarity with personally. I do know that in the year of my birth, Hurricane Hazel ravaged Toronto. So Toronto, maybe high winds. Maybe it's the blustery city, not Chicago. Maybe Toronto is.
A lot of people lost their life in Hurricane Hazel. And then because of Hurricane Hazel, we have the water management that we have today. I think I had an uncle or something that his house floated down the Rouge River.
Wow.
Something like, I can't remember now. It's been so long. Yeah. But when you look at Fiona now went up into Newfoundland and Labrador. My friend Alan's in PEI's sisters, as of yesterday, still hasn't had power.
Okay, let's stop with PEI since you dropped that reference. I saw an aerial photograph of PEI before and after Fiona hit, and I've seen a beach, the sandy beaches, now gone.
There's a outcrop of on the ocean. What do you call it? A piece of land that looks like a teacup.
Yes,
and they call it the teacup. It's gone. Yeah. And that's been years upon years. People go and take pictures by the teacup. I might even actually have pictures. No, that's PEI.
Oh, is it?
Yep, the teacup's PEI. Newfoundland, I don't think they've had a storm that strong, maybe ever. It was pretty strong. Why are these all now the biggest storms? That's the question. What's going on, Terry? You don't think it has anything to do with what you've been preaching for years upon years?
I've been preaching this since I first encountered Al Gore and the book and the movie, the documentary, An Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah.
So that goes back to 2000. So, wow. It's been a long ride, and I still subscribe. I look to climate change science, and I am reminded that former Prime Minister Stephen Harper had a lot of restraint placed on climate scientists in Canada, whose reporting was indicating things that were contrary to his political philosophy. And so when you muzzle the scientists, you're in danger of the inconvenient truth rearing its ugly head.
Yeah, well, I got to admit, myself back when Al Gore was doing his thing, of course, I was one of the ones saying, private jet and everything, right? A bunch of crap. Just making books, just making documentaries, making a lot of, Michael Moore, just making a lot of money on it. And so I was one of those, but I mean, you have a right to change. You say to yourself, okay, if things are, if ice is melting where it shouldn't be melting and all this, there's climate change. And man's playing a part. I don't know. Man's playing a part. I guess there's no sense in arguing beyond that. And if we can do our part, I can't see any harm in that. It might be part of a cycle that the Earth goes through as well, but nevertheless, every now and then these things can wake us up to what we may be doing, what we may be polluting, and change anyways. Yeah. Even if it isn't doing it, you can see now that we have the technology to create clean energy. Well, that's where we should go, clean energy, or strive for that. And I think we're doing it, but we may be a little late. We were warned years ago that it's too late.
We were warned. That sounds ominous. I would like to go back to Al Gore and the whole idea of shooting the messenger without looking at the science. The science was determined way before Al Gore got a hold of it that it's man-made. That's the science. To say anything other than that and say, well, look at him, private jet and blah, 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 and look at how wealthy he is making money, blah, blah, blah. That's all smoke and mirrors. That's all fogging the issue, because the real hard stuff is get off of fossil fuel.
Yeah.
And that we had a chance when the stock market dropped in Canada. We had a chance to reinvent the West with wind farms and solar. Instead, we wait for the resurgence of gas and oil. Wisdom is hindsight. It's 2020.
Money, we need jobs. It is hindsight.
All right. Hopefully we'll have more wisdom in front of the next episode of The Jim and Terry Show.